Member Secretary.
Okay, so at this time, we're still waiting for the author of the final item on the calendar, which is SB3. And so we'll go ahead and wait until the author is here or the chair is here.
You are the next bill? Yes, sir. Just get my head together.
Yes.
It's been diverted.
Over here, Senator. Last man standing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, please proceed. SB3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. So the bill before you would raise California's minimum wage so that it would no longer, when fully implemented by July of 2017, make it legal to pay a sub-poverty wage in California. We live with the largest population of people living in poverty of any state, highest percentage of any state with residents in poverty, and that has many reasons and causes, but a significant driver of that is that it is currently legal to pay sub-poverty wages in California. The President of the United States has declared that income inequality is the defining challenge of our time, and we know that median wage has been stagnant over the last 30 years, that 65% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, that the growth in wages relative to corporate profits is at its lowest in the history of the United States. To be specific, current statute has our minimum wage at $9 per hour. It will increase to $10 an hour January 1st of next year. This bill, in an attempt to get to the federal poverty line by 2017, would raise the minimum wage in California to $11 an hour January 1st, 2016, and then 18 months later, raise it to $13 an hour July 1st, 2017. 18 months after that, it would be adjusted to the Consumer Price Index. And the reason for that, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, in greater detail, is so that we don't have to go through this political debate every so often. This legislature struggled with raising the minimum wage 10 years ago it had fallen so far, far below the federal poverty line as it had not been attended to for close to a decade as its value continued to be reduced due to inflation. We then did raise it in 2013, and that was a very important and incremental step forward. And I applaud the legislature for doing that, but it left us with our work undone. The federal poverty line is a very conservative, a very modest way to measure poverty, and I'll tell you why. Number one, it does not reflect the approximately 30% higher cost of living that we have in here in California that does not exist across the country. It also reflects the cost of a basket of goods that was created over a half century ago. And our society was very different then. Tradition was at the time that you had one parent going off to be the breadwinner and another parent staying at home to raise the children. We know that's not the case today. That is in the very small minority of households that can afford to do that. But there's no line item in the federal poverty line in that basket of goods for child care. And child care, of course, can be as expensive, if not more, than your rent or mortgage. So it doesn't reflect what the real poverty line might be, and there are now other opportunities to measure poverty through a measure that came out of Stanford, supplemental poverty measure, California poverty measure. But we're being very conservative by setting our goal of $13 an hour by July 1st, 2017, to the federal poverty line, to try and get above $24,000, $25,000 a year, which is what it costs a family of four relative to the federal poverty line. You will hear from the opposition, and this is a debate that we have on a regular basis here, that this will be a job killer. I think it's on the job killer list. But study after study after study, and we have a noted economist here from the University of California, Berkeley, to get into the finer details of these many studies, and we have competing studies. So it's science versus science, and can have many of us as legislators just scratching our head, what's true, what's not true. One way to look at what raising the minimum wage does would be here in California. We just did it. What happened? Did the sky fall? Did businesses close left and right? Did capital flee the state of California? Actually, the opposite happened. And all these great bits of information I'm about to share with you, I will not claim that because we raised our minimum wage these things happened, but I will claim that the opposite did not happen because of it. So we raised our minimum wage July 1st, 2014, from $8 an hour to $9 an hour. At the time, California's unemployment rate was 7.5%. It's now $1 more, and of course, those in the business world know that statute will raise it yet another $1 in January. That's already the law. 7.5%, July 1st, 2014, 1 year later with a higher minimum wage, that percentage is now closer to 6.4%. We are creating more jobs in California at a faster clip than any other state in the country. 60% of all venture capital dollars invested in the United States of America, 60% in the state of California. Smart money wants to be in California, even knowing that the minimum wage has just been raised and will be raised again. I have an article here from Bloomberg from earlier this year. Best state for business. Yes, California is the headline. And it points out that 63 publicly traded California companies in the Standard & Poor's 500 index produced the best total return among the 5 largest states. 63 publicly traded companies here in California. The California companies in the S&P 500 delivered returns of 134%. The closest big state challenger was Florida, which was at 82%. Companies that are in California also outperformed the S&P 500 during the past 4 years by a margin of 23%. California's industries making the state number one in business are healthcare. Healthcare companies in California had a return on investment of 267%. Consumer staples had a return on investment of 302%. Specialty pharma, 235%. Energy, 30%. And biotech, 333%. California does better than any other state in return on investment. The 12-month revenues of technology companies in the state was $715 billion. 52% of technology company sales in the United States. New York was number 2 with just 11%. So I could go on and on with these rosy figures. It's just to make the point that we can raise people out of poverty. And there are over 1 million Californians who are working 40 hours a week and living below the poverty line. I suspect we're all just a little bit divorced from that reality. The cruelty of it, the unfairness of it, the impacts, and more studies are coming out to show that it impacts your health, it impacts your heart, it impacts children's brains. Those who grow up in poverty are more likely to remain in poverty the rest of their lives and suffer the consequences of that poverty. They suffer higher rates of crime. They suffer higher rates of arrest. All of this we can change by just rewarding and respecting. And we all talk about, let's reward and respect work. The best way we can do that is make sure that we don't pay sub-poverty wages to those who are working full-time. So I'll save the rest of my comments for my close. Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for your steadfast support. I've been before your committee before on this. Clearly, there's work to be done. Again, reflected upon this great divide and growing divide of have and have-nots in this country, income and wealth inequality, I would ask for your vote.
Thank you, Senator Leno, and also thank you.
I have my joint author. It's a Leno-Leiva bill, and I'm very proud to have my joint author at my side.
That's great.
Thank you, Senator Leno. Thanking myself.
It's a team.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. It's an honor and a privilege to be here to be the joint author on something that I feel very, very passionate about, which is workers and their wages. And I would ask all of you to imagine for a minute. We all work every day. We work up here in Sacramento, and then we go down into our districts and work. So imagine how hard you work every day. And if you are a minimum wage worker and you are working very hard every day, and then when the bills come due, you can't pay the bills. None of us want to be in that situation. We're going to hear facts and figures on both sides, but there's one fact that is indisputable. When workers make more, workers spend more. When they spend more in the communities that we all live and work in, it betters all of our communities and the economy thrives. When we think of low-wage, minimum-wage workers, I think many of us mistakenly think of young people. We think of high school students, maybe college-age students. But the most recent statistic from the United States Department of Labor shows that 88%, that is a huge number, of minimum wage workers are over the age of 20. And 55% of those workers are women. So women are disproportionately affected by a low minimum wage. And let's think about that for a second. $9 an hour. If you're lucky enough to work 40 hours a week, that's $360 a week. You're going to try and make your rent on that. You're going to try and pay your bills. And then you're going to try and feed your family. One worker I spoke to recently made a great statement. She said, I would just like to make enough so that I can pay my bills and occasionally be able to buy my son a toy that he wants. I don't think that that's too much to ask. raising the minimum wage and indexing it is incredibly important. The indexing part, in my opinion, is what makes this bill unique and what makes this bill so important, because we can pick any number for a minimum wage, but if we don't index it to inflation, then it will not keep up with inflation. I want to give you a little example. In 1988, my husband and I were both working for Alpha Beta. We made $13.50 an hour. We were able to buy a house. Our house was 99.9. It was almost $100,000. Now, your average house is about $400,000. If our wages had kept up with the inflation of the housing market and other items that we have to buy, that would mean your average grocery store worker would make $56 an hour. That's not what they make. They make about $20 an hour. So you can see the divide and the issue that we have. And we also can't have it both ways. We can't continue to pay people sub-poverty wages and then be dismayed that they're using social programs. If you're in poverty, you're going to need these social programs. Wouldn't it be great if everyone made a livable wage and didn't need to use our social programs? I will close with this. I think it's unfortunate that we as a legislature are in this position. We should have corporations who are wealthier and hold more wealth than they ever have had in the history of the United States are not providing livable wage jobs. It puts us in a position to help take care of workers, a position that I know I'm happy to be in, and I think Senator Leno is happy to be in, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move to your first witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Jacobs. I'm the chair of the UC Berkeley Center for Labor Research and Education, and thank you for having me here today. Like the rest of the country, California has seen a steep growth in income inequality since the late 1970s. In California, real wages fell by 5% for median workers in the state since that time, with a much larger decline at the bottom third of the workforce. SB 3 would raise wages for 5.4 million workers, which is approximately 35% of the workforce. 93% are adults, 56% are over the age of 30, and on average they contribute 56% of their family income. Nearly 1 in 3 children in the state have a parent who would benefit from the minimum wage increase. So what do we know from the research literature on the impacts of raising the minimum wage? We know that the minimum wage increases have had their intended effect of improving incomes for low-wage working families. They have reduced poverty, the share of individuals living below the poverty line, and in particular extreme poverty. And they've reduced reliance on public assistance programs. While about 60% of low-wage workers in California are in families with incomes below 200% of the federal poverty line, some middle-income families would benefit from the increase as well. Given the decline in real earnings for middle-income families in the state, that's an often unrecognized and positive benefit of raising the minimum wage. But by far the most studied issue on minimum wage increases is the effect on employment. There's been a vast number of studies over the last 20 years looking at this issue. There's been a number of efforts now to put all of those together and do kind of a meta-analysis to see what all that data tells us. And what you find is it clusters right around, in terms of employment impacts, clusters right around zero. That is to say, the most comprehensive summary concluded that the employment effects of minimum wage in the United States are both vanishingly small and not statistically significant, even in the most generous test. Now, people can always cherry pick when you've got they're all clustering around zero. There's always going to be a few off on the side, and people can cherry-pick outliers to use in whatever purpose they want. But it's important to note that the studies that have controlled for regional differences in the economy really do find no statistically significant impact on employment. So how is that cost absorbed? We find that turnover goes down, that employer performance goes up. That brings savings to employers. And the rest of the cost is passed on in price increases. To put that in perspective, our analysis of a proposed at $13 minimum wage, the equivalent in Los Angeles, we estimated it would raise prices overall in L.A. by 0.5 percentage point over a 3-year period. Now, that's higher in the restaurant industry, where you have a greater concentration of low-wage work, and labor is a higher share of operating cost. And so that has some very small effect on consumer demand. But on the other hand, as Senator Leyva mentioned, low-wage workers spend their money, spend it in the local economy, and that has a positive impact on consumer demand. And when you put that together, find that the benefits to low-wage workers of a higher minimum wage far outweigh any employment effects. One quick note on the issue of indexing. Currently, 15 state minimum wage laws out of 30 are indexed to inflation, as are the vast majority of the local minimum wage laws. And indexing is designed to maintain the purchasing power of the minimum wage for those who it's intended to benefit. But it also has benefits to employers as well, because you end up with regular small annual increases that give predictability to business, in contrast to the pattern of irregular increases of unknown timing and amounts that you see in states that don't have indexing. And I know there's people concerned, they look back, well, in the 1970s we had very high inflation, but we can see since really 1980 the Federal Reserve has been quick to reduce inflation over its target levels by increasing interest rates, and inflation has been kept low in recent years. And most importantly, the empirical research has found no difference in the employment effects in the states that have indexing. Still, you don't find a measurable effect on employment. So in conclusion, raising the minimum wage is an effective means of improving incomes for low-wage workers and their families, and has its intended effect.
Thank you very much. Next witness, please. Next witness, please.
Buenas tardes con todos.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Hugo Montalbán
My name is Hugo Multalvar,
y soy un janitor que trabajo aquí en Sacramento para la compañía DMS.
and I'm a janitor that works here in Sacramento for DMS.
Y mi sueldo es de $9.80 la hora.
And my salary is $9.80 an hour.
Y estoy aquí para decirles cómo afecta eso mi vida personal, pero también la de mi familia.
And I'm here to share with you how this impacts me personally and also my family.
Tener un sueldo tan bajo como $9.80 me da a mí la opción de tener 2 trabajos para poder yo cumplir con los mínimos requerimientos de poder mantener a mi familia.
So having such a low wage forces me to be able to have 2 jobs so I can provide the very basic needs of my family.
Tengo una renta que pagar de $1,000 mensuales y por eso necesito tener 2 trabajos para poder cumplir con esa renta.
I have to have 2 jobs in order for me to be able to pay my rent. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to.
¿Y qué implica eso también para mi familia? Tengo una hija de 10 años con la cual no puedo compartir un tiempo porque tengo que tener todos los días trabajo casi de 14 horas e inclusive trabajar sábados y domingos.
And how does that impact my family? I have a daughter who's 10, and what happens is I rarely ever see her. I work 14 hours a day, including weekends.
Implica también de que lamentablemente no puedo comprar un seguro médico porque está tan caro. Por ejemplo, yo sufro de un problema en la vista porque me dio shingles.
So, for example, it also impacts my health and my ability to be able to purchase health insurance. For instance, I suffer from an injury in an eye because I got the shingles.
Y anteriormente tenía seguro médico, me cubría la medicina, pero ahora que no lo tengo, esa medicina me cuesta $200, un frasco de unas gotas, ¿no?, que me tengo que echar a los ojos.
Previously, I used to have health insurance, and I didn't have to worry about this. But now, in order to buy the medication is like $200, and it's just so I can fix my eye, and I can't afford it.
Y es por eso que estoy aquí, porque sé que ustedes tienen el poder de poder cambiar esta situación, no solamente la de mi persona, pero la de miles de trabajadores aquí.
And that is why I'm here, because you all have the ability to change these conditions for, not just for me as an individual, but for thousands of workers.
Y es algo que creo que California no puede tener una situación así, porque muchos trabajadores estamos en extrema pobreza, y eso es algo increíble.
And I think that California can do better. There's a lot of workers in California that are living in extreme poverty, and that's incredible.
En una economía como la de California, que es la 7ª economía del mundo, no puede darse ese orgullo, ese lujo de tener tantos trabajadores, miles de trabajadores en extrema pobreza.
And for a state like California, that's the 7th largest global economy in the world, this isn't something that we ought to be really proud of, to have so many people living in extreme poverty.
Y es por eso que es imperativo, es necesario, es justo levantar el salario mínimo que está a $9 aquí y que debería estar como mínimo $13, ¿no?
And that is why I believe that it's important, it's necessary for the minimum wage to increase at a minimum of 13, and that's what I'm here.
Mi historia es como la de muchos trabajadores aquí, hay muchos trabajadores. Quizás yo tengo 2 trabajos, pero eso me quita mucho más tiempo con mi familia.
My story is like many others. It's not a whole lot different. And I have 2 jobs, and that takes me away from my family.
Y con todo respeto a ustedes, creo que vengo a pedir en nombre de todos aquellos que tienen este mismo problema, a pedirles el apoyo de que levanten este salario mínimo.
And with respect to everybody here present, I'm here to ask in the name of many of the workers like myself to raise the minimum wage.
La historia se los agradecerá. Muchas gracias.
History will appreciate your actions.
Very good.
Gracias. Next witness, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Raj. I'm the political director for the South Bay Labor Council, and I'm here before you today because I actually ran the campaign in San Jose to raise the minimum wage from $8 to $10 an hour with the indexing to inflation with the CPI. And I wanted to talk about the economic reality of Silicon Valley. And you may ask why somebody from Silicon Valley is here to talk about poverty, given that we're the home of Apple and we're the home of Google. But since 2000, the median household in Santa Clara County has seen a real income fall by 19.5%. African American and Latino households lost the most. Their real incomes dropped by 29%. There's also widespread loss of wages, and an estimated 31% of jobs in Silicon Valley pay $16 an hour or less. Even with 2 working families, given our high cost of living, this wage is not enough to meet the basic standard of family self-sufficiency. There's also widening income inequality. From 2000 to 2010, the portion of Silicon Valley households in the secure middle class dropped from 62% to 55%, while the number of households making less than $10,000 doubled. During that time, between 2000 and 2011, the cost of every major household expense category increased faster than wages. The biggest average increases in Bay Area households spending went to healthcare and retirement. For the first time, the average household started spending more on retirement contributions than on food and drink. And more importantly, there is widespread income insufficiency. As of 2010, 1 out of every 3 households, 33.5% in Santa Clara County, fell below the self-sufficiency standard, meaning their income is too low to meet a basic standard of living. Now, raising the minimum wage to $10 an hour wasn't enough, but we brought a lot of people up out of poverty and helped them move in the right direction. Raising the minimum wage to $13 an hour might not be enough, but it's going to significantly improve the lives of a lot of workers across this great state. One of the problems, though, is it needs to have the cost of living. It needs to have that worker power continue to grow as expenses to continue to grow so they can continue a standard of living that moves them forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, this time we'll take the add-ons. If you'll please come forward, state your name, your organization, and your position.
Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, proud to support this bill.
Hello, I'm Michaela. I'm with ACE Oakland, and I'm in support of this.
Mike Carroll, co-sponsor of the measure with the Western Center on Law and Poverty, strongly in support.
Following my colleague Mike, co-sponsor of the measure, on behalf of United Food and Commercial Workers, in strong support.
Thank you.
Hello, Alexandra Sa, Koreatown Immigrant Workers Alliance, strong support.
Lori Jones from the Older Women's League, Sacramento Capital Chapter, strong support.
Tia Kuntz, UCLA Labor Center, support.
Christopher Castrillo on behalf of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti in support.
Hi, Christina Boss Hamilton with United Domestic Workers, AFSCME Local 3930 in strong support.
Steven Sepulveda on behalf of the California Immigrant Policy Center in strong support of this bill.
Rohan Pandey, Cupertino, Working Partnerships USA, and I support SB3.
Ethan Chi, Working Partnerships USA, in strong support.
Sylvia Solis Shaw on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco and the Office of Mayor Ed Lee in strong support, and also on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Napa County. Thank you.
Brenda Gonzalez, SWW, strong support.
Roxanne Miller, on behalf of Mayor Sam Liccardo and our entire City Council, in strong support.
Jeanette Stevenson, chapter lead for both Sacramento Mighty Oaks and Organizing for Action, the Sacramento chapter. We're both in strong support.
Joseph Delgado, City of Los Angeles with ACE, strongly support.
Giovanna Fajardo, resident of Contra Costa County, member of ACE and strong support.
Melvin Willis with ACE, Richmond resident, and in strong support with indexing.
Grace Martinez, resident of San Francisco, with San Francisco ACE and strong support.
Wanda Cleveland, I'm here from Sacramento, ACE member. I'm strongly support.
Vivian Richardson, San Francisco, ACE, strong support.
My name is Carol York. I'm a child development assistant. I'm a former fast food restaurant manager. I'm here in support and on behalf of my husband, who was paid salary and on call for 24/7. On his behalf, we're voting in support, and we hope that you do too.
Christy Akeem, San Francisco, member of ACE, strong support, and the indexing provision is absolutely essential.
Denise Davis, Sacramento ACE, I'm in strong support.
Stuardo Mazariegos, Sacramento ACE, strong support, and strongly agree with the indexing provision. Thanks.
Christina Rechica, Sacramento resident, supporter. Again, also we need the indexing to be attached to this, and I want justice for workers. Thank you.
Anel Flores with the Maintenance Cooperation Trust Fund in support.
Lisa Hirsch, member of Multi-Faith Action Coalition of Contra Costa. We have a coalition of over 50 congregations with hundreds of people, and we're in strong support.
I'm Robert Lane. I'm chair of the Economic Justice Action Team for the Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry, and we are in strong support of this bill.
Pete Wywoody with the California Partnership, statewide coalition of 120 anti-poverty nonprofit organizations in support of this bill and the indexing.
Renee Amador, the Wage Justice Center, in strong support.
Carolyn Gage, member of ACE San Francisco chapter, on behalf of my grandchildren and I, strong support with an index. They are my future, so I'm looking out for them to carry me on.
Kendra Harris with the California Federation of Teachers in strong support.
Randy Cheek with the SEIU Local 1000 in strong support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Renee Bayardo, SEIU California. We're one of the co-sponsors, and we have many members with us here in the room, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrea Castillo with the Latino Coalition for Healthy California and strong support.
Justin Rauza with Roots of Change, also in strong support. Thank you.
Micah Doctoroff on behalf of the ACLU of California in strong support of this important measure.
Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter, also in strong support.
Nicole Wertelman on behalf of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors in support.
Linda Warner with the California Catholic Conference in strong support.
Jim Lindberg on behalf of the Friends Committee on Legislation of California in support.
Jennifer Fearing on behalf of the California Association of Nonprofits and our more than 9,400 member organizations in strong support.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support, to add on in support? All right, hearing and seeing none at this time, I'm going to invite the opposition to please come forward. 3 witnesses. You'll have 3 minutes each. Want to be equitable, 3 minutes each, and then after that we'll move on to add-ons. So whenever you're ready.
I'm never ready.
Never ready.
Please commence.
Good afternoon. John Ross on behalf of the California Restaurant Association. We have had this discussion before, but this one's a little bit different, as I think even the senator would acknowledge. What's before you today is fundamentally different than any other minimum wage proposal that this body or the government of California has considered at any level, at any state level in the last 35 years. What's proposed is a 63% increase starting July 1, 14, which is when the first increase under the prior bill took effect, to July 1, 17. So over a 36-month period, we're talking about a 63% increase in the state minimum wage. I think the economists would agree, but I'm not aware, nor any of the folks we talked to aware of any research that has looked at a price shock of that magnitude in the labor market. 63% has not been done, attempted, or tried anywhere before. To put this in a little bit of perspective, I've distributed a real pretty colorful chart here today that the sergeants, I think, distributed a moment ago. You should have those somewhere in front of you. But just to tell you what it says, this looks at every minimum wage increase that's been done by the state since 1980, adjusts each of those forward for inflation, and then targets where you'd be today. The dark black line is where the minimum wage actually is. So prior to 1997, all these increases were done by the State Industrial Welfare Commission. You'll see those coming in slightly, under around $8 now, if adjusted forward for inflation from the time that they were adopted. In 1997, for the one and only time, the people did it raise the minimum wage by initiative. That was the Living Wage Act of 1996, supported by many of the proponents of this measure. If you bring that forward for inflation, you land slightly below 9 in today's dollars. In 2001, under the Davis administration, we raised it again through the Industrial Welfare Commission, 2007, 2008 for the first time in the legislature. What you see in the sharp increase in the black line at the end is the increase that was just done in 2013, which at the time was the largest ever proposed in the state of California. It's a 25% increase in the minimum wage, 25% that's now half implemented. The other dollar will come next year. That proposal